Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Growing Up, Loving Henri panel discussion. This is our second program in our Yom HaShoah Holocaust Remembrance Day series, honoring the Holocaust survivor and philanthropist Henri Landwirth's life and legacy. I'm Barbara Goldstein, Executive Director of the Holocaust Education Resource Council. On behalf of myself and Stacy Goldring, President of Searching for Identity, we are pleased to bring this discussion today. We hope you had an opportunity to learn about Henri Landwirth's remarkable life. It defies a brief summary and deserves the beautiful film, Loving Henri. A survivor of 5 concentration camps, this man lost his entire family to the murderous hands of the Nazis. After the war, miraculously, he reunited with his twin sister, Margot. Starting life again in the US, Henri became an incredibly successful hotelier. His friendships extend across the world, including the friendship of NASA's Mercury 7 crew. And all the while, he emerged as an amazing humanitarian and philanthropist. Today, critically ill children's dreams come true at Henri's Give Kids the World, highlighted in the film. His philanthropy is endless. Stacy and I extend our gratitude to director Robert Allen Black for creating Loving Henri. We also thank Linda Landwirth, Tallahassee Community College, Hadassah, Helen Hill, Lisa Paycheck, and Chase Van Tilburg. And we thank you because of your gifts of membership to HERC and Searching for Identity make these endeavors possible. As the daughter of Holocaust survivors, Loving Henri affects me in a deep way. Henri, like my dad, Marcel Spiegler, had it to pick up the pieces of his Nazi-ravaged life and begin again as part of the American immigrant experience. I would like to turn the program now to Stacy to introduce our panel. Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara. Today, with his 3 children, we'll explore what it was like growing up, loving a father named Henri Landwirth. I'm pleased to share with you a painfully condensed summary due to time of the incredible philanthropic lives of Greg Landwirth, Lisa Ullman, and Gary Landwirth, focusing on family first. Lisa, Greg, and Gary have served leadership roles in their family foundation, named in memory of murdered Holocaust victim Fanny Landwirth. The grandmother, Lisa, Greg, and Gary never knew. Greg led the Fanny Landwirth Foundation as president for 10 years. Lisa and Gary serving on the board. More than $10 million was contributed to prevent homelessness and hunger, support youth education, senior services, and student mentorship. Art with a Heart in Healthcare, a nonprofit Lisa co-founded, offers patients and family art experiences, enhancing the healing process at Wolfson's Children's Hospital, Nemours, and Mayo Clinics. For the last 6 years, she has participated in the Searching for Identity second generation writing workshops, and she also serves on its board of directors. Lisa speaks in schools about her family's harrowing experiences, and not only a gifted writer and interior designer, Lisa is an artist, expressing her identity through canvas on mixed media. Gary founded and served as president of A Gift for Teaching and A Gift for Music, organizations generating millions of dollars in free educational and musical resources for students in need throughout Central Florida. He's worked in executive capacities at Give Kids the World Village, an 89-acre nonprofit resort in Kissimmee, Florida, providing cost-free wish vacations to critically ill children and their families who want to go to a magical place, experience the pure joys of childhood, and capture precious family memories missed due to illness. Since 1986, Give Kids the World has welcomed more than 176,000 families from every state in the Union and across 76 countries on our planet. Gary continues his intense nonprofit work, serving on numerous boards in leadership and consultation capacities. All children of survivors inherit a decision. Unlike most of us, these second gen are forced to make a choice to share or not share their parents' Holocaust story. Woven into this decision is this confluence of their own personal identity, the historic relevance of their parents' survival, today's horrific rise in Jewish hatred crimes, Holocaust distortion, and denial. The second gen identity is complicated because, well, to riff on Tolstoy, families are complicated. The lasting effects of the Holocaust did not end when the concentration camps were liberated. So a very welcome special today to all the second and third gen. And for those of you who are with us, because, well, this sounded interesting, we hope when this program comes to an end, you will be inspired to act on Henri's message of love and kindness. Have you ever imagined what it was like to grow up with parents who survived the Holocaust? As the creator of the Second Gen workshops, this is our focus, as it will be here today with Gary, Greg, and Lisa. And as they come on board, if you have any questions, please type those into the Q&A. Lisa, Greg, and Gary, let's get started. Welcome.
Thank you, Stacey.
Hi, Lisa. Hey, Gary.
Hi, Stacey.
Hello. So we'll just wait for Greg to pop on, and then we'll get started. Well, while we wait for Greg to get on, I want to kind of ask the first question about the film, and that would be, what did it feel like to watch your father's film? In the past few days, many who are with us today have had the experience of seeing the beautiful film that Robert Allen Black directed, Loving Henry. And so I'm just curious, what was it like to watch your father on film? Lisa, would you mind taking that first?
Sure. Thanks, Stacey. I'm so grateful to be here today and talk with you about the film, my dad, and kind of what we've all gone through as children of Henri Landwirth. I watched the film yesterday, and it was especially emotional for me because we're coming up on our dad's third year anniversary of his passing, and it's actually Friday, April 16th. So, you know, watching him and seeing him speak and just his just walking, his gait, his smile, his interaction with the kids at Give Kids the World, it you know, it made me miss him so much more. So you know, it was hard, but at the same time, my dad was very private, and to think of him in this kind of public figure is strange, because we just saw him as our pop, and to think of him as anything but that, it's surreal. So
you called him Pop?
Yeah, we called him Pop. And so, that's how it felt yesterday. And that's how, but I've seen it many times, and there's always different feelings every time I see it. So that's what I experienced yesterday.
Okay, Gary?
I watched it yesterday as well, and I felt the same thing, Lisa, that you did. I felt like I missed him more. I watched the way he walked down the roads, and I watched the way he walked with the kids, and how inspired or how energized he was around the kids. But when I first saw it, the first time we saw it in that little screening room, I walked in as someone that was really excited to hear a story that we hadn't heard before, because although our dad had talked about the Holocaust in general terms, and we had read the books that he and his friend Bill Howell Medeiros had written, we never really got it from him. And so I went in there wanting to see this story that I didn't know what was going to be. I didn't know what was going to be on there. I didn't know what he was going to say. He had opened up so much to Robert Black, the director, in ways that we had no idea. And so I was watching it as somebody that wasn't his son. I was watching it as just somebody that didn't know him. And I was amazed at what I was seeing on the screen. I was also right next to him, and I was worried about what he was going to react to. I didn't know how he would feel seeing what he had seen on the screen.
Did he comment on that after you screened it the first time?
He was pretty tough. I think, just for him to even have gone through the process of going there, he was ultimately courageous. And I think he viewed watching the movie and talking about it afterwards as something that he just had a strength of being able to do once he started doing it. I mean, he never wanted to when we were kids, but I think as he allowed us in, then he became more comfortable with it, I think.
Well, that brings up another question then. Why, it's not easy to decide to make a film. Why did he decide to do it? And what was that like? Did he call you up on the phone and say, hi guys, I'm going to make a film? Or how does that happen?
No. He was asked to do the film. He didn't really have anything to do with it besides being asked by David Haskell, who was the producer. And he had heard about our dad's story and had read about it through a friend of a friend. And so he really was just asked to do this film. He had never really thought about doing a film.
And when we first heard that he was getting followed around by this group of filmmakers that I didn't know from anybody. I just always saw them. They were at parties, they were everywhere, and I just sort of let them be. I didn't really start paying attention until my dad started saying, well, they want me to go back to Poland. They want me to go to Auschwitz. And then my ears picked up, and I said, is that such a good idea? Do we really think that should happen? Is that going to be good for you? And I'll never forget, we were sitting in a restaurant on a Sunday afternoon having lunch, and he said, well, I decided I'm going back to Poland with the film crew. And I said, when? And he said, I'm leaving Thursday.
Wow.
And so Lisa and I and my brother Greg, who didn't have a passport, so he couldn't go, but we had to drop everything because we couldn't not be there and we couldn't not be part of that. So he always saw the film as sort of a secondary thing. He never really paid that much attention to it.
Okay, so I have some questions. First of all, how old was he when he decided to go to pursue this? And I didn't realize watching the film, and this is what, I saw the film a few years ago, and it stays with you. I didn't realize that the film then was evolving in real time as Henri was going through this process, because it wasn't decided at the beginning, okay, we're going to shoot here, here, and here in America, and then we're going to go here, here, and here in Europe. It just kind of, yeah, that's storytelling. You just don't know where it's going to go. So do you remember how old your dad was when he decided to do this? And Yeah, go ahead.
2001, so he was born in 27, so 73, 74.
Okay. And did you feel like a certain protection? Like, were you worried about him? And was this one of his ideas? Because I know he was an ideas man. Did you worry? I mean, this is not, you have to be brave. And 73, like, talk about
was
that.
petrified. I was petrified.
You're petrified.
There, and I went there. My main goal for going there wasn't to be in the movie. I didn't want to be in it really. I wanted to protect him from the film crew so that they wouldn't take advantage of him and they wouldn't put him in situations that would just make for a better movie. Now, after I've gotten to know Robert and the film crew, they never would have done that. And I didn't really ever have to step in, but that was my main goal for going, dropping everything at the time.
Okay.
I think it would have also been helpful in retrospect to have had some kind of therapist with, my dad and to debrief, to talk through a lot of things. I know, Linda was his, confidant and everything else there. And I think she really held his hand literally through the whole thing. But I think that would have helped the stress level and helped him process what he was actually having to witness again and, live through again. So.
And the one thing that was so surprising to me were on the bus rides and the train rides to different places, he and Margot, his sister, and his cousin Kitty would start talking about things. And we would be listening, and I said, have you never talked about this? It's been 55 years. Nope, never. They never once would have got together and talked about their experiences in the camps until those couple days.
Wow. It's almost like you're, learning who your father was all over again, because then whatever you're hearing, you have to go ahead and reshuffle that into your life and, your experiences with your dad growing up. And to never talk about something so incredibly huge, the worst thing that has ever happened to mankind in recorded history, and you're just hearing about that's wow. Your father mentions that the film could offer some catharsis. Did it partially? Did it not? What was the takeaway once that experience was after he went to Poland, came home? Was he a changed man? Things went back to normal? Like, what happened after that?
Well, if you did watch the movie, I know maybe some people that are on the call may not have had the opportunity or, time to watch it, but, he ended up a few days later when he and Linda were going on a trip to Italy, he had a stroke and it was just too much for him. I mean, the stress of what happened, all the filming, every place that he stepped and walked. And so from there, I mean, he lost his vision partly. He was very frightened. I mean, it was a really difficult time. And, afterwards he ended up, going to Hawaii. He ended up just having this, once he recovered and recuperated, kind of ended up having this new lease on life again. It was almost as though he was kind of like reborn. It was, and I don't know. I think it didn't have as much to do with, I think, the trip as it did his illness. So
I think what I saw was that it brought up everything that he had been trying to push down as far as he could for 55 years. It brought it all back up, and I didn't see it as a good thing.
Okay. Greg, how did you see your father after the trip, adding to what Lisa has explained, the stroke, et cetera, new lease on life? Was his relation any different with you, with the siblings?
I think probably he seemed a lot more frail, and he did seem scared. He couldn't see well, and he was weak. So it's difficult to see him like that when he's been so strong all of his life and hasn't let things bother him. But he recovered, and in hindsight, it probably wasn't the best thing for him to do, to go and have that trip.
Mhm.
If I can say one more thing.
Please.
For me as the son, and Greg and Lisa probably the same, it was the best thing he could have ever given to me in terms of understanding his background. I am so grateful that I'm sorry that he did it, but I'm grateful after the fact that he did, and that Robert was able to put together such a beautiful movie, because we have this thing that's really his legacy, and we can watch it over and over, and we can watch the way he talks and he walks, and actually have something that's a personal story about a Holocaust, not just saying there were 6 million people murdered. Here's a story of 1 and his sister 2 and his cousin Kitty 3, people that had these very specific experiences. And so the specific stories that they told in the movie, and they told after the movie and during the movie that didn't get in, I think that's what makes talking about the Holocaust so much more impactful. It's the personal stories. It's not the data or the numbers. And that's a huge gift to us to have that story from him.
It's so difficult to ask a survivor, and I would argue a second gen, to talk about the pain and to go to those difficult places, and not only, okay, let's talk about it, but let's write about it. Let's get it on film. As a storyteller, I almost feel like I must tread so carefully because I do not want to be a voyeur. But in the back of my head, I just hear the denial and the distortion, and we're on borrowed time. So the idea that it took a toll on your father, there's no doubt his age and the emotional toll could very well exacerbated everything that happened to him. But it is, Gary, it's such a gift to history and humanity that he did that. And of course, you get all the effects of that as the children, and you don't get a choice. There it is, right? We have so many questions coming in, so I want to make sure I get to those regarding the film before we move forward. It wouldn't be fair if we did not discuss Margot, such an incredible component, part of the fabric of your father's life, his every heartbeat. What was it? She was the yin and the yang on this trip. It was so beautiful to capture that. Tell us about Margot, what you think, what was her influence on the film, and how Henri digested everything that happened. She was a strong woman. Go ahead, Greg. Could you tell us what you think about your Aunt Margot?
I think she was a very strong woman, and you could see that she had a hard time saying no to him also. They were very different. She was not as happy and joking and things. She was a little bit darker, and things with Margot were black and white. It was either good or it's bad. And I think you heard that in the film also. So it was difficult to have conversations with her because there was no leeway in what you were talking about. So I like the way you called it a yin and a yang, because I think that's true.
Gary?
Because she remembered everything, and my dad really didn't remember much at all until he actually got to the camp. I don't know how far we would have gone if he hadn't talked her into coming to Krakow with us. She was able to point to the exact street. She knew the exact window where they used to look out of. She knew, I mean, it was incredible to watch her just have everything right there. And there was one line in the film where my dad says, it's so important that you came. We're one, we're not separate people, we're one person. And it wouldn't have been right if he would have gone without her. And I think she realized that when she finally decided to go. He had to talk her into it. He didn't go to Auschwitz, but she did go to Krakow. And so I think she was if there wasn't a therapist there, she and Kitty were probably the closest thing.
Okay. Lisa, I'd like you to comment on Margot, and then I'd also like to give voice to Kitty and Kitty's role in this film in Henri's life. And there's a question, was she in the same camp, or was she in camps, or was she in different camps? Do we know anything about Kitty?
Well, I think I'd go back with Margot for a minute. Once they, finally were reunited, they were inseparable. They were thick as thieves. They would stay in the same cities. She had a gift store in all of the hotels that he was managing. And so in some ways they were business partners. There was, this personal connection. There was this, all the holiday meals. My dad, they would eat together for Passover, and, it was just so important. So she was a huge role in my dad's life. And, I think they did see the world very differently. She would really kind of stay within her sort of old country, world, where she was with other Holocaust survivors or people from Europe. And so she lived kind of that way. My dad really wanted to move past it, and he didn't want that anymore. He wanted to make new friends and, have a different life. So, and then as far as Kitty, he and Kitty were very close. They were second cousins and loved each other dearly. I can't really tell you exactly where Kitty was. I know she wasn't in the same camps as Margot and my dad, but she was in slave labor camps. And really what I can say is, the rest of our family, except for one aunt, which was Fanny's sister, Aunt Zelma, she survived. But the rest of our family was murdered. I mean, we have no other family, really, and our extended family was gone. So touching on family.
I think, Lisa, what you said, I feel in my heart that there are a lot of second gen who can identify with those types of voids. So no, you're certainly not alone. What was the question, this from one of our attendees, what was the question you did not get to ask your father? If there could have been something you could have asked him about the film or life in general, what would that question have been? And I realize this is impromptu, so if you want to think about it, we can get back to it. I don't know. Gary, do you have anything you'd like to?
He accomplished so much. Is there anything, I would maybe ask, is there anything he regretted not accomplishing?
Okay. Greg?
I have to think about it, I think.
Okay, so we'll
Thanks.
put a pin in that one. We could, we're almost at half an hour in right now, and I can tell you that the questions are flying in, so I'll try to get as many of those in as possible, and also carry on with our panel discussions. I want to go ahead and bring up another question was, if you had to describe your father, who would you say your father was? Who's Henri Landwirth?
Go ahead, Gary.
I would describe him as this charismatic, charming, funny, fill up a room kind of guy that everybody wanted to be around. And then behind that was this driving passion that was hard and exacting and impatient and never ending.
Okay. Greg?
I think he's a bit of a miracle man. The things that have happened in his life and the stories, and he's always been in the right place, except for getting caught for the Holocaust. But after that, he's always been around the right people. And like Gary said, I believe that they're drawn to him. He had a story and he had the charisma. But his life was full of miracles, and he truly believed in miracles. And I believe that he was a miracle, and that we're here talking, I think, is one as well.
Lisa, would you like to add anything?
Yeah, I think before I tell you what I think my dad is, I'd like to tell you that my dad, even though he was victimized by the Nazis and in the most cruel and vicious way, he was never a victim. And I really admired that. I honored that in him. And you know, he was fearless, you know, he was spontaneous, he was driven. He was also a practical joker. You know, you could probably see that in some of the movie, but there's so many stories. But I also think he used his humor as a defense mechanism too. But I'd also say he was also a workaholic.
Okay.
He was driven to succeed. You know, I think that kind of at all costs. And I think that, you know, our early family life, you know, suffered because he really, you know, it was difficult for him to be there for dinners. And, you know, I think that his priority at the beginning was really to succeed and to make something of his life. And, you know, a failed marriage. And so it was hard. It was difficult.
I appreciate your honesty. I just want you to know that the Q&As continue to pour in, and the chats are just so filled with love and kindness, which makes me feel like your father's kind of with us in the chat and in the Q&A here today too. And Linda Landwirth has let us know that Kitty was in camps for 2 years in Belgium, so she was not in any of the camps with Henri or Margot. And I appreciate that, Linda. Being a journalist by training, I like to know the facts. Your dad definitely seemed like he, well, I don't want to put words in anyone's mouth. Forgiveness. Did that work for your father? Was he able? Contrast that with Margot. What did you, let's talk about forgiveness in your father.
It was a word that he used a lot after he started talking about the Holocaust, and he felt he was able to forgive them. I think he did in some respects. I think there was always this trepidation. Even my brother and I went with him on a trip to Europe when we were 15, 16, 17, something like that. And he didn't want to get off the train in Germany. He would get off anywhere else but Germany.
Yeah.
And he saw that the train was going to stop in a little town outside of Mauthausen. And so he said, let's go. So he grabbed us, we jumped off the train, and I think it was in Germany. And that was
You
the
said
first
let's
time.
go, or he said let's go?
No, I never would have said let's go. He said, let's go. I want to show you this.
Okay.
And so that was the only time I know of that he was in Germany because he wanted to be, and he didn't really want to be. So I think he forgave. I think he tried to forgive, and he tried to forgive everybody else. Margot in the movie said no, it's just
Yeah,
Joe,
never
and
heard.
I don't know. Greg or Lisa, you might have a better sense.
You know, as I've been speaking to different school groups and community groups via Zoom right now, one of the questions that 8th grader asked was, you know, how did he forgive, you know, what had happened? And I think part of my answer is I'm not so sure that it's even forgivable. And that's just me, but I just don't really understand it. I think parts of him did forgive in some ways, I guess, but there are other things that he would do and say, and, you know, not drive a certain car. You know, there was a little piece of him that I think that would never ever forget. But I personally don't know if it's forgivable.
Okay. I have to transition back to something, Gary, you were saying about you and your brother deciding with your father to hop off a train in a town near Mauthausen, and then do what? And
He said, I want you to see one of the places I was imprisoned.
and did you know that there was a place where he was in prison that was near this little town that was near Mauthausen?
We didn't know until he said it.
How old were you?
I think I was 17, Greg was 15. And so this was the first time that he really even opened up at all. And he didn't open up that much, but what he did do, which I'll never forget, was he got off the train. We took a taxi to the camp, to Mauthausen. I don't know, it was 20 minutes away or so. And we went in and he showed us around. And we were the only people there. It was overcast and dreary. And he walked around and said, this is where the razor wires were that they made us stand for 24 hours. And my friend Maurice stood right next to me, and we would talk to each other so we wouldn't fall asleep. Here's where they did this, here's where they did that. And that was the only time that Greg and I, Lisa wasn't on that trip, but that was the only time that we heard him talk about it directly to us. And then a horrible thing happened. We were getting ready to leave. We were the only people there. And apparently the ticket taker / security guard had gone to lunch. So we couldn't get out. And I don't think I've ever seen my dad close to panic as he was there.
Wow. So what happened?
The guard came back after lunch, let us out. We got back on the train, and we went on our way the rest of the trip. He didn't talk much about it after that. Greg, do you remember him talking about it?
No, but you know, years later, just that had happened, that they had locked the gates while we were in there. And I remember him feeling so bad that saying that he got his kids locked in to the concentration camp and he felt responsible. But I remembered the look in his face that the gates were locked and that we were in there with him. So it was quite a bit of irony.
That's been pure terror.
That is more cruel than anything that's like a nightmare.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And for him to go back, to go on the trip was pretty amazing, because that short time that we were in Mauthausen really, like Gary said, brought back a lot of memories to him. And it's a testament that he was willing to turn around and go back to the other camps and knowing how he felt when he was there with us. So
Mhm.
it was
I
tough.
think it was so important for him to have this film finished and actually be able to share it with us, and also with the next generation, and to keep telling the story. And I think that was really what drove him to do this, to finish it and to be a part of the film. It was so important.
Well, this leads directly to my next question, and ask you, what was it like to grow up as the child of a Holocaust survivor?
Well, it was, when we were growing up, I don't think we thought of ourselves as that. I don't think
Right.
we realized, I didn't realize, I was trying to think last night, probably until third grade, fourth grade, that he was. And then as we got older, we started reading stories about him in the newspaper. That's how we would find out any of the details.
So you found out through the newspaper?
Yeah, for the most part, because he wouldn't tell us. I'm sure he was protecting us. And so we eventually knew that he was a Holocaust survivor. But I think in the early days, what overshadowed that was just his amazing life. I mean, growing up as a son or daughter of Henri Landwirth was exciting. We had astronauts in the house for dinner. We got to go to the launches. We were around famous people that he loved being around and loved being around him. And so that was an exciting time. And as we grew, that the Holocaust story was always in the background, and everybody knew it, especially all of his friends. I think as he got more comfortable, it got put more and more into the foreground. And that's when we, at least me, started realizing I was a son of a Holocaust survivor, and that was part of my identity. And probably wasn't until I was in my early teens that happened.
How about you, Lisa? I want to know what it was like, and then I want to know when you realized, I mean, did you see it in the paper too? Like, did Gary come over to you and Greg and go, oh my gosh, look what happened to Dad? Like, I need a visual.
No, really for me, and it may have been because I was the youngest, my mom really told me a lot of what went on with my dad. He had shared, I'm sure, quite a bit with her, and she shared a lot of it with me before my dad wrote the book and talked about his experiences in the book. And then I knew even more details. And that was not until I was 22 that I read the book, and I had just tears rolling down my cheeks reading the details of his experiences in the Holocaust and the concentration camps and what really went on. But it was really my mom. She was really the rock. She was the real gem that just kind of held it all together, when my dad wasn't there. And the other piece of it is that I felt in some way a responsibility, I guess is the word, in some ways, not to, growing up with him, not to burden him in any way or bring pain or sorrow, more of it. So, it was kind of a responsibility that I felt. And I think we all would agree that we sort of had to walk this line of, well, don't upset Pop. We just don't want to, him to feel any more sorrow.
Greg, do you have anything you want to add to that?
I don't think I identified as a Holocaust survivor's son. There weren't any, except for our cousins, Margot's kids. I didn't know anyone else that had a family that was involved with the Holocaust. The temple that we went to, they didn't make us feel any different or special, or it seemed like it was kind of kept quiet a little bit, just because we didn't really know too much about what to talk about. I know I don't ever remember talking with my cousins about their mother's experience, Margot's experience, and Pop's experience. I don't think we ever had conversations like that to identify ourselves as being a little bit different. So it was kind of difficult. I don't think anyone could really understand. Gary and Lisa and I, we have all this, I don't want to say it's baggage, but we have all of the same experiences growing up, and that really kind of solidified who we were, I think, as siblings also. So.
Okay. Did your I think this naturally leads to a question about your faith, your identity. Like, did your father have was there a religious element in his life? After all, this was clearly a horrific thing that happened to humanity. It's humanity's Jewish population. And did that role or religion come into your lives at all? Your schooling, anything like that?
He definitely, we definitely went to synagogue, not all the time, but occasionally. Greg and I both got bar mitzvah. And so it was important for him to be Jewish, I think. I do remember we couldn't join the country club.
The yacht club. Mm-hmm.
Yacht club, yeah.
The yacht club where?
It was in Lakeland, Florida. And that always stuck with me. And he just sort of said, no, we can't join. I'm Jewish, we can't join. It was more matter of fact than it was anything else. My mom was Catholic when they got married. She converted to Judaism, and so the picture you see now is with us in the Christmas tree.
She's beautiful.
Yes, she was. So we had the Jewish cultural holidays, we had the Christian cultural holidays. So I always kind of joke we ended up somewhere in the middle.
Yeah. I double dipped too. I loved it. Lisa, do you have anything you want to add to that?
I feel like my dad was a very spiritual person. He was actually bar mitzvahed in the Krakow ghetto. And I can't even imagine what that must have been like and how harrowing that must have been. So he was 13 when he was there. He really believed God spared him, for a reason. And he really was faithful to God. And I think he felt that way, ever since he survived, the Holocaust. And it was important to keep the traditions of the Jewish holiday. My mom was great about that, Passover and, Yom Kippur and all of the holidays. She would really, prepare the foods, and she would even invite him, after they were divorced.
Aww.
Mm-hmm.
Aww. So do you feel you have a responsibility to share your father's story? We're almost to the top of the hour. It's hard to believe. Do you feel you have a responsibility to share your father's story? And what do you want your father's legacy to be and the takeaway to be regarding when people see the film or learn about your father's story, when they hear from you, Lisa, in the classroom or in future curriculum, etc.?
I definitely feel a need to share a story, responsibility to share a story, especially as you mentioned at the top with what's going on today. And now that there are so few survivors left, I think it's probably our job as second gen to try and keep those stories alive. I mentioned earlier about how important the stories were, not just the facts and figures. And for us to have a father that was as visible as he was, as successful, kind of as in some ways famous in a small circle, gives him a visibility that other people might not have. All of the stories that are in the Holocaust Museum in Washington are certainly just as powerful, just as horrific. And I think it's important to tell all of them. We are lucky that we happen to have this movie to go with it. We don't have to just say, here's what we heard our father go through. We can say, watch this. Listen to what he said as he was there. Look at how it affected him as he was trying to walk through Auschwitz and couldn't do it. I feel that even more as I get older, as the survivors get fewer and fewer. Everybody I meet, I think at this point, very shortly after I meet them, they know that that my dad is a Holocaust survivor.
Wow. Wow. Greg.
I'm hoping with the generation, even the World War II veterans that are dying, they were there to witness what had happened. And with the Holocaust survivors numbers dwindling, I think it's really important to keep his story and the remembrance of the Holocaust alive. With today's environment, with media, social media, hate groups and things, without people around to validate what actually happened, I'm afraid that they're gonna want to rewrite history and try to kind of take it out of the books. I know that there's a lot of students, high school students and college students, they don't know anything about the Holocaust. And then for some adults to believe that it never happened. I had a friend for 30 years. He had been with my father. He had seen my father's tattoo, and in recent years, he doesn't believe the Holocaust actually happened. So we're not actually friends anymore, but it has to, the truth has to be told. And I think that's really, really, really important.
Well, Greg, I think that's an incredibly powerful place where we can wrap it for, perhaps this will be the first of many conversations we can have about your father's remarkable life and legacy. And, you know, Deborah Lipstadt said it best: there are facts, there are opinions, and there are lies. And what you are doing by having this conversation with us today, what Robert is doing by bringing this beautiful film to the world, is that we are there as the facts. We all can do something. And I think you all three stand as testimony to the bravery it takes to tell the story, to tell your father's story, to explore who you are and the effects of the Holocaust on the second gen. And hopefully this will inspire other people. I mean, I know you inspire me, so I'm sure this will inspire other people to capture their own parents' story, whether the written word, film, music, art, however they choose to do it. And I feel hopeful about that because of people like you and your father. So you're welcome. I want to thank you so much. Lisa, did you want to say something else?
I just had one other thing to say,
Yes.
that I feel a huge moral obligation for us to keep talking about this and sharing this story to others, and especially with the rising tide of the intolerance in the last 4 years, and anti-Semitism and racism and all of the hate crimes that have been going on, that it's imperative now more than any other time that we can talk about it, but I think you also have to do something about it. And I think my dad sort of invented the whole Nike, just do it, before it ever even evolved to anything. Was you have to really be a part of the solution. And I hope that we can all step into that role.
Well, you've charged everyone here. You've given them a beautiful gift. They've had the opportunity to see the film, and they have inherited your father's story now, just like you have. And it's up to them to tell that story and the millions of stories like it to be a light in the world. So I want to thank you again.
Thank you.
Okay, well, I do wish we had more time. I want to thank you all so much. And I want to turn the discussion now over back to Barbara Goldstein of the Holocaust Education and Resource Council. Thank you.
I want to thank everybody, and thank you, Lisa, Gary, and Greg. This was absolutely wonderful. And thank you, Stacy, for the great discussion and questions. Every year during Yom HaShoah, people gather to watch lighting of 6 candles, representing the 6 million Jews who were murdered in the Holocaust. On behalf of the Holocaust Education and Resource Council and Searching for Identity, I would like to pause and imagine we are together, as hopefully next year we will be, and lighting the 6 memorial candles. You will see the 6 candles now. Well, the number 1 candle is to remember the babies and children. The 2nd candle is to remember the mothers and fathers. The 3rd candle is to remember the grandparents. The 4th candle is to remember the families. The 5th candle is to remember the friends. And the 6th candle is to remember the liberators. This program today is dedicated in memory of all the Holocaust victims, and we should never forget.